This week, the masks came off behind closed doors. Something broke, and in an instant, the balance of the war shifted. One meeting, one briefing, and Washington woke up choking on a narrative it never expected to hear. What was sold as peace exploded like a political grenade. Because what's being pushed now doesn't just reject Moscow's terms. It pulls the United States directly into the line of fire. This isn't about ending a war. It's about redrawing borders, activating alliances, and exposing what Russia fears most. To understand why this moment is so dangerous and why Moscow is panicking, listen closely to what Peter Zeihan explains next.
What changed in the last week is that Steve Witkoff met with Zelensky for the first time. And guess what happened? He tilted his head back, and Zelensky poured a few gallons of Ukrainian propaganda down his throat. Witkoff came to the White House, vomited it forward. All of a sudden, we have a Ukrainian peace plan that ignores all of the Russian demands. Specifically, would allow for an Article 5 style security guarantee with the United States. One of the things that the Russians have refused to even negotiate on is Ukraine ever joining NATO, because they don't want the other countries, most notably the United States, to get involved in the conflict. Remember that for the Russians, it's not just about Ukraine. It's about pushing their western periphery back to an area that they find more defensible, so that that periphery actually matches geography, so that they can use mountains and seas to defend themselves. That means not just conquering all of Ukraine, but also all of Finland and Latvia and Estonia and Lithuania and Moldova and big chunks of Poland and Romania as well.
What Zeihan really exposed is that Russia's war was never driven by Ukraine alone. It's driven by geography and insecurity. The Kremlin isn't fighting for land. It's fighting to push its borders back to terrain it believes can protect it. That fear explains why even the idea of Western security guarantees for Ukraine is treated as an existential threat. And it's why this conflict was never meant to stop at Ukraine's borders. What Peter Zeihan laid bare was a grand design behind Russia's war. But now we move from strategy to consequences. Because while Moscow dreams of secure rear areas and untouchable depth, reality is clawing its way into Russian territory itself. The illusion of safety has shattered. What was once considered unreachable is now burning from the inside out. And inside Russia, the fires aren't coming from foreign missiles alone. They're coming from within. This is no longer a distant battlefield problem. It's a domestic nightmare for Vladimir Putin. As the winter holidays arrived, Ukrainian-aligned resistance movements turned Russia itself into a battlefield. Not at the front lines, not in contested zones, but deep inside areas Moscow believed were secure. The very places where Russian assets were supposed to be safest are now exposed, infiltrated, and destroyed. Putin never planned for this. He never imagined the war would boomerang back into Russia with such precision and confidence. Yet here it is, and it's getting worse. On December 21st and 22nd, Ukrainian partisan activity reached a level that will echo through Russian military planning for years. December 22nd, in particular, marked one of the most devastating internal strikes Russia has suffered since the invasion began. In the Lipetsk region, far from active fighting, a resistance cell operating under Ukraine's intelligence umbrella carried out a flawless sabotage operation against one of Russia's most valuable military assets. Two Su-30 fighter jets, aircraft critical to Russia's air defense and strike capabilities, were reduced to twisted, burning wreckage inside a Russian military airfield. These jets weren't near the front. They weren't exposed to enemy fire. They were deep inside Russia on a guarded base, inside hangars, and yet they burned. Ukraine's military intelligence later confirmed the operation was carried out by resistance operatives working inside Russia itself. The financial damage alone was estimated at around $100 million. But the strategic damage was far greater. These fighters aren't expendable. They're among the most versatile aircraft in Russia's arsenal. Capable of all-weather operations, resistant to electronic warfare, and armed with a lethal range of weapons. They launch missiles, drop glide bombs, enforce airspace, and punish Ukrainian cities. Now 2 of them are gone. Not shot down in combat, but silently destroyed where Russia believed nothing could touch them. What made the strike especially humiliating was how it was done. The resistance didn't rush. They didn't improvise. They studied for weeks. They tracked patrol routes, mapped guard schedules, and waited for the precise moment the system blinked. One operative slipped inside the base, then deeper into the hangars. The sabotage was methodical. Controls were damaged. Systems were compromised. Then the fire came. Footage later released shows the operation unfolding step by step. Tail numbers visible, interiors tampered with, flames consuming aircraft worth more than many towns. The final images show the operative leaving the airfield calmly, unchallenged, as if the base itself had been abandoned. No alarms, no pursuit, no resistance. For Putin, this wasn't just a loss. It was exposure, and it wasn't an isolated incident. That same week, Russia's air power suffered additional blows. In Crimea, Ukrainian drones struck the Belbek air base after earlier attacks had stripped away its protective systems. Once the defenses were blinded, Ukraine moved decisively. A MiG-31 was hit. Days later, more drones followed, slamming into two Su-27 fighters, one sitting on the runway, fully armed and ready for missions against Ukraine. 5 aircraft destroyed or disabled in roughly a week. This isn't attrition. This is targeted dismantling. Ukraine has made Russian air power a priority throughout the war, and the numbers tell a brutal story. Hundreds of planes and helicopters have already been eliminated since the invasion began. Each new loss compounds a problem Russia cannot easily solve: production limits, training shortages, and a growing inability to protect assets, even on home soil. But the nightmare didn't stop in the air. On December 21st, just one day before the Lipetsk operation, another resistance strike hit Russia where it hurts most: logistics. In the Rostov region, operatives from the Atesh movement struck a critical railway hub in Bataysk. This wasn't symbolic sabotage. It was surgical. Rail infrastructure is the backbone of Russia's war machine. Troops, fuel, ammunition, armor vehicles, all of it moves by rail. And this particular hub feeds multiple occupied regions, including Kherson and Zaporizhia. It also connects routes to Crimea and Donetsk. Atesh didn't target trains directly. They targeted the system itself. Relay cabinets were set ablaze. Equipment was destroyed. Movement stalled. Supplies froze in transit. Planning collapsed. Timelines unraveled. And once again, the group provided proof: images, videos, clear evidence that the strike happened exactly as described. Fires burned openly. Infrastructure failed. Russia was caught flat-footed. This wasn't a new capability for Atesh. It was a continuation of a campaign years in the making. By early 2024, the group was already well known for its operations in occupied Crimea. Members conducted surveillance, gathered intelligence, and fed targeting data back to Ukraine. One operative described moments when Russian troops approached him as he collected information, only to walk away without even questioning him. Whether that speaks to the operative's skill or Russia's incompetence hardly matters. The result is the same. Atesh has repeatedly struck railways before. In 2023, segments of rail lines in Crimea were destroyed, delaying multiple trains. Later operations pushed far deeper into Russia, including attacks hundreds of miles from Ukraine aimed at disrupting the transport of long-range drones used against Ukrainian cities. Drones that have killed thousands of civilians. That makes the rail lines carrying them legitimate targets, and Atesh has treated them as such. Russia's vast railway network, long seen as a strategic advantage, is now revealing itself as a liability. With tens of thousands of miles of track, the number of potential choke points is enormous. Every destroyed segment forces detours, delays, and cascading failures that ripple through the entire military system. History has shown this before. Heavy reliance on rail logistics always creates vulnerabilities that unconventional warfare exploits mercilessly. And Ukraine's resistance movements are getting better at it. Yet even after airfields burned and rail hubs were crippled, the pressure didn't ease. While partisan fires still smoldered, Ukraine launched a major aerial strike against Russia's oil infrastructure in the Krasnodar region. Drones struck near Tuapse, hitting the Tamaneftegaz oil terminal, a critical node in Russia's energy and export system. The strike triggered a massive fire, damaging equipment, port facilities, ships, and infrastructure tied to liquefied gas handling. Flames spread across more than 1,000 square meters. Storage facilities capable of holding over 1 million cubic meters of fuel products were engulfed. Russia tried to downplay the damage, blaming fragments from intercepted drones. But the scale and spread of destruction tell a different story. Too many targets were hit. Too much burned. This wasn't debris, it was impact. And that brings us to the core reality Putin now faces. Russia's so-called safe zones are no longer safe. Its airfields are vulnerable. Its railways are exposed. Its energy infrastructure is bleeding. And the attacks aren't slowing down, they're multiplying. What was supposed to be a war fought far from Russian citizens has become a conflict seeping into Russia itself, carried by people Putin cannot identify, cannot deter, and cannot stop. This is what internal erosion looks like. This is how strategic collapse begins. And the fire is spreading.